Today we're in for a treat. We're going to talk about something that I know is important to all the carriers because I've been talking to many of you, and we always talk about automation. But underlying that automation is the need for important, accurate data, and that's certainly an important element of any automation initiative. And not only do we have Amdocs, one of the folks that know network automation really well, orchestration and inventory, we also have Andreas Quiskamp of Vodafone to talk about their real-world lessons in terms of what they've done. And it is quite impressive in inventory. I wouldn't steal his thunder. I'll let him talk about it himself. So to kick us off, I'm going to turn it over to Jose Carlos of Amdocs to talk about why data is important in the support of automation. Jose Carlos, over to you.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you, James, for the introductions. So in this first part of the session, we're going to be talking about the, how important data is to support automation and to really realize the benefits of automation. So let me start by introducing, the pressure under which the service providers are currently, under. So it's probably, the biggest pressure in recent years, and this pressure is coming from multiple fronts. On one hand, the customers, whether consumers or businesses, are demanding, agile digital experiences with, very fast and flexible response times, whether we're talking about pre-sales or post-sale. The networks are also another pressure point, which is, due to the them becoming programmable, software-defined. All of that is really good because it enables service providers to offer new services. But at the same time, it's introducing a level of complexity that is challenging today's operations. And finally, and in this case, certainly not least, is the financials. So in most mature markets, the revenues are very flat, in some cases even declining. All of these under, an environment of high inflation rate, and also with CSPs being expected to continue investing in network to meet, the demand for data, and also for the ubiquitous connectivity that we all want. So all in all, a lot of pressure for CSPs. So one of the ways certainly to relieve that pressure is to implement automation. Okay, so automation will be able to, release the pressure on the existing operations, reduce that gap that is being created between the existing operations capacity and the one that's required to manage the new networks. And on the other hand, it will be able to, automation will basically enable CSPs to provide those agile, digital experiences to their consumers, which in the end is going to, help their bottom line, their profitability. Now, automation, as we all know, is a journey. It's not something you can implement overnight. And, even the Telemanagement Forum has defined, 6 steps to autonomous networks. So we see that, it's really a journey where you need to start with specific domains and maybe specific processes. Typically, we see that assurance is the area where automation normally is implemented first, and maybe some of the domains where you are more confident with the data. But in reality, the end goal is really to achieve that end-to-end service and network automation that can operate, across domains and throughout the life cycle of the service or the network. This is why, you see this diagram on the right-hand side where we're trying to show, the end-to-end, the 360-degree life cycle of services and networks that needs to be maintained. Okay. Now, there is a new wave of automation, which is intent-driven or intent-based automation, that really embraces this holistic approach. Okay, and it's coming to contribute to the CSPs getting on this journey. So in intent, the automation platform works towards maintaining the customer business intent, not only, during the first fulfillment of delivery, but during its entire life cycle through the assurance processes. Okay. Now, because today's networks, are becoming open, disaggregated, and basically heterogeneous with new entrants, the automation platforms needs to be vendor neutral, and they need to also be standards aligned, so that even though you start small, implementing automation in domains that you're comfortable with, etc., you need to have this end goal of implementing the end-to-end service and network automation across, any vendor or any process. So what is in reality, intent-driven or intent-based automation? So we'll just use this slide to explain a little bit what we mean by that, in case you're not familiar. Intent is really a new approach to managing service and network lifecycle, where basically you are taking a declarative approach instead of an imperative one. So basically that means that instead of telling the system how you want something to be delivered, you're telling the system what is it that you want, what is it your end goal. Typically, we use the analogy of the autonomous car. So eventually in the future, when you get into an autonomous car, you will be able to tell, the destination you want to reach, and you will be able to specify maybe some constraints, like, I want to take the fastest route, or I want to take the least cost route, okay? As opposed to today's, where, when you get into your car, the system, you're actually using the steering wheel, pushing the throttle, the brakes. You're basically assisting the car to take you where you want. So if we, go back to the CSP and try to explain these analogies a bit better, it's like, moving away from having hard-coded processes that need to consider your sunny and rainy day scenarios and every possible option there is. And if there is a change, modify them. Is moving away from that to have a system that is driven by a model, a target model, where you will define, constraints and policies, etc. So as we see in this diagram, this is a holistic approach because it needs to start from the design time. So in the design time, I will declare which are those target models and constraints. And this model then is basically published to my runtime automation platform. And the model is basically going to guide the entire process and the entire life cycle of my service. So in this example, we see I have a customer that is asking me to fulfill a service and augmented reality gaming service in this case for a number of users in a specific area. So the customer is not interacting with the system in a technical way. It's doing it in a business intent. Well, this is their intention. So then the system needs to basically translate that into the requirements that the machine can understand, so it can decide how to optimally deliver this service, okay? And not only deliver that service, but also maintain it. So as soon as I have fulfilled that service, the system will observe how this service is performing through events, telemetry, okay? And upon detecting there is an issue, it will basically enter again in this closed loop cycle of fulfillment of assurance, which are really like two sides of the same coin, so that I'm delivering continuously the business intent.
Excellent. I think that's been a good intro so far. Excellent, Jose Carlos. Talking about some of the key initiatives in the carriers, the pressure to automate, and the drive towards an intent-based system that obviously I think we're going to need if we're going to automate all those elements and all those complexities in the network that's growing. Now, I know I hear from a lot of carriers out there, and you're probably on this webinar, around the challenges. Everyone wants to automate more. Everyone would like to, walk up all the different levels of automation to get to fully autonomous. But I know we're all facing challenges. And so I'm going to ask the audience here in the poll question, and I would encourage you to click. It's very simple. It's just one click. And I think that will inform all of us and be very helpful. So what are the biggest challenges that you're facing to improve the level of automation? Is it one, siloed, fragmented operations, which I know exists, definitely? Or is it access to accurate and cross-domain data? Now, there's a hint there in terms of the title of the webinar, but maybe, it's number 3, standardization of operational processes. It's Or perhaps is it security that's getting in the way of your ability to automate, right? Is that a good reason? Is that a good excuse? I don't know. You tell us, right? So at this point, I think, I'd like you to go ahead and pick one of the four. Should be pretty straightforward. We'll take a few seconds here to give everyone time to click, and then we'll look at the results. Hopefully it will not, hopefully it'll be a pleasant surprise, but let's see. I think Jose Carlos and I both have our bets. We'll see who wins as it comes out. But any words, Jose Carlos, to the audience as we wait, count down the last couple of seconds, waiting for people to respond?
No, just unfortunately, the audience can only pick one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know. You hear my like, I won 4. Where is 5? All of the above, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Okay, we'll give it another.
Prioritize.
Exactly. We're gonna give it another 5 more seconds or 6 more seconds, and we'll count down. 3, 2. Lock your answers in right now, and then let's see what we get. And it's going to be a surprise to all of us here. So I think if we click on the next one and the next slide, I think the results will automatically show up. So let's see what happens. Oh, excellent. All right. Well, we have 2 winners, as they always say, right? We have 2 winners. Everyone gets to win. But the top 2 are siloed fragmented operations, and 2, access to accurate cross-domain data. And I think those probably were expected. Now, people always pick number 1, number 2, and then it usually goes down from there. But regardless, I still see a good amount of security in there and standardization. So certainly, I think all valid concerns. But the number 1 and 2 are siloed operations and access to data. And I guess you're in luck. I know what slides are coming up next, and I think the webinar is going to be right on point. So I'm going to turn it back to Jose Carlos to continue his excellent presentation. Back to you, Jose Carlos.
Thank you, Roy. So yeah, not surprised by the answers. I think we all know our business. So yeah, and that's an excellent way to continue with the presentation, since we were talking about this new wave of automation called intent-driven, intent-based automation. And in reality, in this new wave, things have not changed, and data really is critical, okay, to support automation. We can say that, data is the automation oil, that data powers automation. We can say it in many ways, but I think we all agree that it is really essential for any automation process, as you cannot automate what you cannot see, okay? So in that sense, you need, the systems need a 360-degree view of services, network, and cloud, given, that today's networks are moving into the cloud, whether private or public. You need a view also of the cross-domain. So it's something we mentioned already, right? The cross-domain necessity of these automation layers, because in the end, our customers, CSP customers, are requiring end-to-end services. They don't bother whether this is traversing several domains, multi-vendor, etc. They want an end-to-end view. And then very important, it's not only you need to have complete data, the data also needs to be accurate. Okay, and the only way for that data to be accurate is that the data needs to be also receiving near real-time updates from the network itself, the cloud, basically to understand what is it that you are delivering to your customers. And finally, and this again is something that we mentioned, is that this data needs to be exploited. So it needs to be exploited by the automation platform, but also AI ML is another angle to automation, right? Artificial intelligence and machine learning. And all of these systems, they need to be able to exploit the data to run this automation and allow to have good decisions being made. Now, so given that data really needs to be provide a 360-degree view, and where is it coming from? So we see usual suspects like assurance platforms, that will deliver events, or telling you about the health of your network, or service quality management platforms. You might also get live updates or the network itself, okay, or the cloud provider, whether it's private or public. But then BSS data is also very important, as it will give you another angle to the data, beyond just the network and the service, but also maybe other aspects of the customer service. And then analytics. So again, this comes back to the the AI point I made before. But analytics is very important, so that you can predict issues that you might be facing in the future and anticipate any problems to your to the business intent, okay, that you need to fulfill. But if there is one core component in automation, really is the inventory, okay. The inventory is basically providing that view of basically, sorry, I have an issue with the slides. Inventory is really providing that view of the network and the service and how they are related. So it will maintain the topology of service to network and cloud information. The inventory really supplies key data to support operational processes automation. So in Amdocs, we have been delivering inventory products for over 20 years, okay, evolving with the times and with the technologies, and basically enabling our customers to upgrade and support any new technology that comes their way. So we see here, this is kind of the anatomy of the Amdocs inventory. We see, we can manage obviously physical and logical networks, your traditional networks, which are still today, about 3/4 of the technology out there in the network. We can manage also the new virtual cloud network, which are growing, but still, not the biggest part. And we can link, the services with all of these underlying networks, whether virtual cloud or physical. Then continuing, with the key characteristics of the Amdocs inventory and how we support and evolve with the times is the multi-source data management, which is basically a way to support, all those brownfield operators which have a heritage of inventory that is fragmented, and maybe they don't want to run into a data consolidation project. So we can provide, access of this data from the automation platforms without needing going into data migration projects. And finally, standards aligned open APIs. So again, this is critical, and it's something that Amdocs knows very well, and we are, participating and contributing and even chairing some of the standard bodies like Telemanagement Forum, and involved in others like 3GPP or MEF. But basically, we do consider standard aligned APIs in everything we do to ease, the integration and reduce costs for our customer, the service provider. So we want to close this part of the presentation before handing over to Andreas by stating, that we are leaders in this inventory market. For as I said, we've been over 2 decades here. This is recognized by our long list of projects and also by analysts. We say over 100 inventory deployments worldwide. But what's more important, we are supporting the largest tier one galaxies and also very innovative tier 3 service providers out there. And what's important is that many of these customers started with us over a decade ago. They stay with us because they know that we provide to them an upgrade path to support any new service or technology that comes their way. So now is a moment when I'm very happy to hand over to Andreas, who's leading the inventory initiatives at Vodafone.
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you, and thanks a lot for having the chance to say some words about inventory. As you can imagine, from my point of view, inventory is in any case the most important thing. It's a kind of the heart of a company. Without inventory data, I think a lot of things will not work. Some words to myself. I'm in Vodafone since a long time. I'm accountable for inventory and asset management systems across the European markets, not worldwide, but across European markets. And what I would like to tell you is the following. You can imagine that in such an multi-opco telco operator, we are facing with a lot of challenges. For sure, if we are talking about broadband, mobile, transport, or you can say cable, also by mergers and acquisitions and by not having enough time in the last years, it's really a big effort and a challenge to now merge all the things into one single strategic resource inventory system. Yeah. So in some markets, there will be more than one, you can be sure. And it is really a fragmented view of network and services. Also, this is not streamlined so far. And some opcos before it was divided into really kind of resource and service inventory system. In some opcos, everything is included in one system. So overall, it's really fragmented. And what comes on top that you can imagine, you will fight with a lot of different systems, means different technologies, different vendors. And yeah, this is one of the most important topics to harmonize even all this, not inside one opco, but also on a kind of group level to have everything streamlined. It is a multi-year program, you can imagine, because you need a lot of resources. It is really budget-intensive topic to modernize the inventory. In this case, it is led by Vodafone Group, which where we have the accountability covered for the local inventories. So how we are doing it, it's a kind of constant onboarding. So starting point was to create really a strategic system to align on this, and now to onboard it more or less opco-wise. It's for sure not only strategic. In some cases, we are doing tactical approaches. It's a combination of both, and also to maximize the return on invest. You can imagine that you are able to do that by, in the end, then cost sharing for upcoming projects. We are doing it in a scaled agile framework, as you can imagine, together with the business, with IT, with operations, and for sure with the inventory teams. In some cases, it is really a long process to find the right solution here. As you can imagine, it's a kind of detailed level, because in the end, it needs to work for everyone. It needs to work for a German market, for example, in the same way, like for a small market like in Albania. You can imagine that the requirements are not completely the same. The harmonization approach is the following. I think it was announced several months ago that Vodafone and Amdocs has taken this partnership to use Amdocs products for this inventory harmonization. There was also the decision for a single user interface to make all the process flows visible and usable for all the markets who are participating. My experience shows that it really makes sense to only do it via one GUI, because then you need only to implement it in one point, and you have the chance in the end only to implement the process in one way. Yeah, if you have different GUIs, you can imagine that there will be very fast a request. Okay, I need it in a different way than the others. So this can be avoided by this. And for sure, in the end, it's a single code base. Means it is really one-time development and then multi-times rollout. The biggest challenge, what we saw directly in the beginning, let us call it really harmonization. Harmonization means in different systems, you have different naming conventions, you have different data models. A lot of things needs to be harmonized before you are able to start this harmonization. So what we've started, you can imagine first time, site and location management, because if you have not fixed this, from my point of view, you will completely be blocked. Then all the other things, I don't want to mention it, each and everything separately. You can imagine also network equipment, network technology models, third-party integrations, user interfaces, all such stuff you need to harmonize, including device harmonization, or if we are talking about logical connections, all the things you really need to find an harmonized way. And believe me, it is not so easy, because the mobile planner will tell you, I'm the most important ones, the fixed planners or cable planners, what they are doing, see it in a different way. So it is really a challenge. Why we are doing that in the end, for sure, and we've heard it before, is to deliver in the end automation, which is directly, and sorry for step in, I was a little bit missing one question, which belongs to data quality, because automation only will work if the data quality is high. So this is also one of the most important tasks, to have a kind of data cleansing during this harmonization, to set special, let me say, you need to define who is the data accountability, a data owner for each and every attribute. You really need to define it, because otherwise you will be lost. For sure, we are talking also about things like network discovery or to getting data from the network element managers. But in the end, you will have a degree of approximately 50%, I would say, where you are dependent on manual data input. Yeah. So it's a combination of both. How we are doing this, for sure, this is what you can see here, the core product. It's an Amdocs core product, ARM. What we have aligned is a so-called Vodafone pack, where we have all functionalities, all capabilities, whatever we are talking about, covered, which comes from Vodafone. It is up to Amdocs to make the core product and the so-called Vodafone pack work together, so that it's also easy to upgrade the core product and to do an upgrade of the GUI. In any case, this pack will work together with the core product. For sure, it's really a cycle. We are only doing one upgrade. We have one design authority, one build, one test. So it's really a big community, and this community, dependent on the onboardings for sure, it's growing and growing, and we only need to do each and everything once, one test, one development. This is really, how to say that, it's really streamlining the complete thing. And the more and more you are progressing, the more and more the value will be. We have a kind of specific local layer. It's really a very small thing for each local market. It normally contains only two things. On one hand, for sure, the interfaces, because the background behind the inventory is not the same in each and every OpCo. So different interfaces are necessary. Where also other areas are working on this strategic harmonization, for sure, we are in a good position. We only need to implement one API. For sure, we are doing this by definition of the telemanagement forum. Then we can copy what we've implemented. What I mean is, if you are talking, for example, about P&I, the interworking between resource inventory and the P&I system, if on the one hand is our strategic inventory solution, on the other hand, the strategic P&I system, then for sure, you can also, the API can be copied from one OpCo to another. And the second thing, which is normally covered in this specific local layer, if we have to fulfill requirements by law, makes no sense to put it, from my point of view, into this Vodafone pack. This is then also really OpCo specific. Yeah, you will not be able to avoid the specific layer, but you can keep it to an absolute minimum. How it looks like, this is what I've mentioned before. We have one end-to-end user interface. we have taken the decision to keep one database instance per opco or per local market. For sure, we have only one environment, so everything is on one duplicated hardware for MVAs for sure, which makes it much more easier, and we can really, in a better way, divide the data. So it is one GUI with multiple database instances for the local markets. What we are doing, we heard it also partially, we heard it also before. With this data we are serving from, and this is, let me say, only really a short extract, planning departments, fulfillment, fault management, performance management, zero-touch operations, which is becoming more and more important from my point of view, and also to be able to do all this NVI onboarding. Because this is, in comparison to the resource inventory, relatively new. This was built up also on a group level. So here the interworking is much easier. Nevertheless, it needs to be connected. You need to have the connection between NVI and the, let us say, legacy inventory. Most of the things I already said, the key business and technical benefits. 3 big columns from my point of view: increase workforce usability and efficiency, for sure, by all this harmonization of data and functionality. It makes it much more easier. You have a broader community. You only need to discuss each and everything one time. You can implement harmonized processes. There is no way, no other way than for the local operators to use. Then you can really increase automation by this, and for sure also streamlines user experience across Vodafone markets, because if you have the same system, the same processes, it's completely independent where the user is sitting and for which market he's doing some things. Same look and feel, everything is working in the same way. And for sure, network planning cost reductions. This is also, I think, obvious here. Then increase data quality. This is mostly driven by the harmonization. If you're putting 2, 3 or more inventory systems into one single inventory system, a lot of things will be getting much more easier, much more streamlined, and will avoid a lot of manual work. You can avoid all these data breaches and other stuff. You can remove data duplications. Otherwise, you need to work with, for example, dummy parts in one system, because to do something end-to-end, you need more than one system. And it's also much easier to do this live sync with the network data. Otherwise, you also need to implement it more times. Yeah. So for me personally, a single inventory system is really a key point. The same on operational performance. I think this is also clear. The common delivery and rollout process across the markets. As I mentioned before, even you have a separated database for each participating local market. It is also for operations very easy to do so. Then on the interfaces, what I don't want to say in the beginning is that all the interfaces are different. In a lot of cases, they are the same interfaces for different markets. So you have really a set of also aligned interfaces. It makes it much more easier for operations, for issue and error handling and all such stuff. Then, last but not least, what is very important, and we had a lot of lessons learned in the past years, that are the critical success factors. What is the must-have? Management stakeholder buy-in on group and market level. And it is in some cases really not so easy to overwhelm a local market, to give up what they had in the past, what was built maybe also in-house, and now to switch to a kind of product. It's not so easy, and you really need the buy-in from your own management. And then this management really needs to be aligned with the local market. Then, for sure, long-term vision. And it is beyond the 3 years period, let us say far beyond, because if you're onboarding OpCo by OpCo, for sure, it depends on how much markets you need to harmonize. It can very easily take 5, 6, 7 years. So you need to select where to start, where you have even in the beginning, the biggest value and the biggest business benefits. Then the organizational culture. This is a little bit, let me say, related to the point number 1, what I've said. It really requires flexibility and compromises. What we see in these working groups is that in the beginning, we have 5 or 6 opinions, and then we need to, in some cases, shorter or longer process to find really this one streamlined way where all participating parties say, okay, that's a good thing. Let's now proceed with this one. How we are doing it, we have set up a kind of core team, which is for sure the inventory team. We have also colleagues from each local market for the business, and then also the IT team. It is important that from the business team, from the business of the local markets, you have someone who really can take decisions and then will also provide this decision into the local market. Otherwise, it will be really, let me say, hard to find the right way. Then on data quality, this is would be the last topic. I also mentioned it before, to identify all master data sources and really to align on who is accountable and responsible for that. Standardized data, what we saw also, we have removed in some cases, we also have removed a lot of data or not used fields, for example. Then also the alignment on how device modeling looks like. There's also historically grown the different need in the different markets. Then also related to that, simplify data. In some cases, what we saw, a lot of data are collected, which in the end, maybe they were in use in the past, but not today. So from my point of view, you should, you really could keep them out. Otherwise, to lower the complexity, otherwise you constantly also need to check this data. This makes no sense. Remove data loops. What is meant by this? It's more or less easy. We are talking about local resource inventories, which are doing the daily work of the local market. This data normally in the end will be provided to some group instances. It could be a set of inventory data to provide something, for example, for harmonized assurance, harmonized alarming, zero-touch operations, or whatever. Also, these systems using data, sending the data to somewhere, and you really need to take care of that your data in the end are not circling in a kind of loop. Yeah? If in the end a local resource inventory data is getting data back from a group system, but it was sent before from the resource inventory, makes no sense. In some cases, it is really funny if you look in some historically grown things, how it is working. Yeah, and it's there's no way you need to eliminate this. Then also derive business and process alignments through data harmonization. In some cases, it's, how should I say it, a little bit self-organizing, because if you're doing this harmonization, automatically you need to change, or some processes will change or needs to be changed. It depends a little bit. But also a very important topic. And yeah, what I see, you need to eliminate most of these critical success factors, because otherwise you will not be able to bring it to a successful end. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you, Andreas, for sharing that level of detail. And I think very, very important, the lessons learned in doing that. That was extremely valuable. So it's time for Q&A, questions and answers. And audience, I would like to encourage you to go ahead and put questions in there. It may be that we can't get to all of your questions today, but fear not. I think the team here at Amdocs and Vodafone will probably find a way to get back to you. In the meantime, if you could go ahead and use the Q&A panel and submit your questions, we'd love to hear from you. And I know that both Jose Carlos and Andreas are looking forward to answering some of your questions and that follow on. Okay, I see a couple coming in, so I'll go ahead with those first. There is one here that's directed at, let's see, it looks like it's Andreas. So the question, and I know Andreas has touched on a little bit of it, it's in the inventory modernization and harmonization journey, where do you decide to start? And I know you talked about biggest business benefits, I think, Andreas, earlier. But on top of that, how do you define your roadmap? And it's a long question. Is it based on net of domains, lines of business, or the state of the existing OSS? And I think they're trying to figure out how do you define your roadmap? How do you define the metrics? And maybe a couple more words, if you could touch on again, where to start the journey. So clearly, they're looking to do something like you, and they're looking for a bit more guidance. So Andreas, if you will.
Yeah, let me try to find the right answer. Hopefully, let me say it will meet the expectation. First thing, for sure, we have done some investigations, and at some given point, we have chosen the system. This was, let me say, really the starting point. You can imagine that there were several systems across Vodafone markets in place, and this is what we have investigated. We have chosen one. And then we have taken also the decision, even in the beginning, you need to, how should I say it? You need to do a big amount of invest. And you have the chance to do two things. One option is to do it in a market which has one of the strongest positions from the financial background. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for sure, to start the discussion to plan this budget on a group level and not on, let me say, local market level. So this was the starting point where we have started to create this. And then once there was a level of, I don't know exactly how to say that, a level of confidence or a level of that the system could be also used in other markets, really to start where the need in the local markets is the highest. You can imagine smaller markets maybe have not really inventory systems. They are doing it in another way. Then you have markets which are not meeting the strategic system, but they are maybe very well prepared by only have one single inventory system. So also this was the case. Yeah, it is completely indifferent. And so we try to figure out what are the most important things, where are the, I don't like this word very much, but let us say the low-hanging fruits. Yeah, where is the need the highest? It's more or less a little bit a combination of that. Yeah, and in some cases, really smaller markets will now, so to say, overtake the big ones, because there we have started, but in smaller markets or mid-sized markets, you will be much faster than in the big markets, you can imagine. Yeah, so it's not so easy to answer, to be honest. It was a longer finding process.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, this is a complicated process. It's impressive what you've done across multiple markets, multiple opcos, multiple systems. I think that's important, but I recognize the importance of having group buy-in and senior management, because to standardize on one system and to drive harmonization requires a lot of willpower and commitment from management to make it happen. So it's a challenging process, but as you point out, when you can achieve it and you can replicate it, then it brings a lot of value to the overall organization. So excellent. So speaking of commitment, this is a related question. I'll have maybe you answer first, and then maybe we'll go to Jose Carlos for his opinion as well. This one says, internally, we always run into skills and budget constraints in implementing automation. I think we've all heard that. What is your view on this, Andreas? Any suggestions for them? And I'll start with you, and then I'm sure Jose Carlos has worked with many carriers as well, and let's see what suggestions they have. Any thoughts? Skills, budget constraints.
This is really, let me say, a hard process, yeah? And what we have learned in the past, even in the beginning, it was really hard to get everything collected together, to be able to start. The most important thing is it must be clear to everyone that first you have to invest really a lot before you are getting the first, let me say, cash back. Yeah. Over the time, it's really getting more and more and more. And if you... Only to give you an example, for example, 5G implementation. If we are talking about 3G or 4G, we have done it in 10 local markets. It's only as an example. Once we have achieved, okay, I've onboarded the first 4 or 5 markets. For these 5 markets, I only need to implement 5G once. Yeah. So then there you can see the business value over the time, and it's really hard to create a business case. So we have. You will never achieve something with creating a 3 years business case. Then you need not to start. It must be minimum 5, better 7 years in such a big project. Otherwise, you will not be able to show the value really. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's very clear. I think with something like that, as you point out very early on in the slides, a multi-year commitment across the entire team, entire group. And if you misset expectations up front and you sell it as a quick win, then you never get to where you want, because the expectation is not set correctly. And I think what has been incredible is the ability to convince senior management and the team that we're going to go on a multi-year journey. Here is the vision, here is the roadmap, and we're going to take it a step at a time, and understand the value will come over time, not the first 6 months or the first 9 months, because it's a hard journey. So I think that's quite incredible. Let me ask Jose Carlos and say, hey, so Jose Carlos, on this question, you've worked with multiple carriers, I mean, notably Vodafone, but other carriers as well. Any suggestions in terms of overcoming the skills and budget constraints? Any lessons that you think you could share for the audience here?
Yeah. I mean, like Andreas said, I think you need to have a long-term vision here, right? It's if you're trying to apply a short-sighted business case, just to justify the investment, is probably going to be hard. So it's you really need to have a long-term vision and works towards that. What is clear is that automation is not an option, right? It's something that must be implemented. The question is not if, is when. And the earlier you start, the earlier you will gain the benefits and collect those fruits, like Andreas was saying, right? Investing first into harmonizing processes across markets for a technology is hard, because everyone has to give and take. But in the end, everyone will profit once you're there. And this applies, to a galaxy like Vodafone, but it also applies to other telcos, right? Because as we said at the beginning, automation is really a must. On the skills question, to me, it's a little bit related, right? The budget and skills. You need to reskill your staff. You need to enable them to support new technologies. Virtualization, cloudification is coming. Today, the networks are primarily still physical, but we're moving there, and there is clearly a need to reskill staff. And there are companies like Amdocs which are probably ahead of the game and can help there as well.
Allow me to say something additional, even on the skill. This was really in the beginning one of the most hard fights we had, because you need the best skilled and experienced users or business guys, business colleagues to do so. This is contradictory really to doing their business. Yeah. And it really depends on how much the stakeholders, even in the first local market, are willing, let me say, to support this, because they need to stop maybe projects. They are not able to deliver everything, because these people then these colleagues are really then covered in this harmonization approach. And from delivery point of view, even in the first 12 months, it is, or should I say it is useless. It will not deliver in the first 12 months anything valuable. If you are harmonizing naming conventions, sites, devices, and so on, it's hard stuff to do, but it will take a while before you will be able to deliver really the first business value. Yeah. So even the starting point is really hard on skills and on budget. Yeah. So sorry, Jose.
No, I hear you, Andreas. I think, in some of the consulting with the carriers, I sit inside some of those meetings, and you're in the opco, and then someone will come in and say, "Oh, we got this effort. Oh, that's a group effort. Like just throw them someone so that they keep them happy." Exactly that, and that doesn't work, because the throw them someone is not give them our best person, because we need our best person. She or he needs to be working on this. That's a group thing, right? I mean, that's the wrong mindset. That's exactly the wrong mindset. And at the end of the day, they say, okay, what have you done the last 12 months? We have a schema. It's now harmonized. But, there's no operational benefit. But the schema is really critical to the next step. And you're absolutely right. Selling it, getting the buy-in from management at the group level, at the opco level, at the local level, that's an art, right? That's a difficult thing. And that requires skills. That requires a champion, someone who can actually drive that through. So, again, kudos to you guys for doing it, because I've sat inside across different carriers, and I see, it's not easy, right? Just getting to that point of agreeing to do it, of, providing the resources and commitment to do it. That's a hard thing. So anyway, as a related question, since I have you anyway, it says, I don't know what you can share, but someone wants to know, at which step of the journey are you on, and how long did it take to do the first market and the following markets after that? So whatever you feel comfortable sharing, I think would be great for the audience. Andreas, I think, the audio.
Sorry, I should unmute myself before talking. We are somewhere in the middle. I don't really, and hope you understand that. We are somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
We are working on that overall. Even we need to prepare in the beginning, you need to prepare a lot of things, which is not directly related to project work. So we are working on that a little bit more than 3 years. We are approximately in the middle from the overall runtime, also from the opco boarding perspective. Yeah.
Excellent. Got it. Well, thank you, and appreciate you sharing that. It's a question here. Actually, this one, I think I'll take it over to Jose Carlos, which is a lot of focus on software-defined networks and programmable networks. I know Jose Carlos covered that in your presentation. From an operational point of view, how do you see those kinds of systems coexisting with existing legacy networks, I guess, in the context of what we're talking about here in terms of automation? Jose Carlos, anything to shed? And Andreas, you're welcome to comment as well, certainly. So,
I mean, the coexistence is natural, right? They are part of the same service that you are delivering to your customers. So, to me, the coexistence is just a must. So, yes, we are. We started with virtualization some time ago, and now it's more about cloudification. But in the end, all of these new, software-based infrastructure is relying on the physical infrastructure, right? You need connectivity, you need cables, you need basically the underlay. So there is no way in which you can do efficient operations management if you are dividing this. You know, if you're managing on one side your physical, the way you used to do, and now implementing new systems which are isolated just to do your virtual cloud stuff. So you really not you really need like you know, an overlay layer for operations that can give you the cross-domain. Sorry, I mentioned it at the beginning of the deck. You know, the cross-domain view, because in the end, as we say, you know, customer services are spanning across all of these domains. So yeah, clearly, I mean, they need to coexist at network and operations level.
Excellent. Thank you, Jose Carlos. I know we have a couple of minutes left. Unfortunately, one of our presenters, actually, Andreas, we really appreciate you making time. I know you're really, really busy. He has to run to another meeting. But let me take this time again to thank you, audience, for being with us and asking those questions and providing those questions. And thank you, Jose Carlos, for an excellent lead-in presentation. And a huge thank you to Andreas Quiskamp of Vodafone for sharing your journey, sharing those important lessons.